Now that you've gone through what your site looks like live on Google and index, it's probably a good time to look at how your site is stacking up in terms of page speed and some of the more detailed aspects of the technical side. Looking at your page speed from a couple of the different tools that are out there will help actually give you some clarity on if you do have some size issues with your images, on if your website is running pretty slow. Google puts out a nice one, and they have actually just recently updated this to allow for you to plug your website in and get some feedback that's done in a very easy to understand manner. So let's go ahead and grab Amy's URL. So basically what Google is doing is taking data from the last 30 days, I believe, of Chrome browser history. They're gonna give you some feedback on basically user experiences from people who've gone to your site based on Chrome data. And so what we have here is a score of 22. Notice on the left, you have tabs for mobile and a tab for desktop. This got switched recently. Remember how much we've been talking about mobile first, about how important mobile is. Google has not only switched how they index to mobile first, they crawl your site on mobile, not on desktop, to get your website and to determine where you should rank. This is also set up for mobile first. Amy is at a 22 out of 100, which is not good, but also not uncommon, especially not for a photography website. But at the same time, this is gonna provide some data as to what needs to happen. Down here, you're gonna see the opportunities section, and that's really where you're gonna get a lot of your insights as to what you might wanna work on. Some of the big things to look at are where the big estimated savings bars are. And what we can see here is it looks like we have some video. Serve images as next-gen formats. That's just a complicated way of saying perhaps you're not using the best compression, like a JPEG. And then properly sized images. And this is a common one to see on photographer websites. You can pull a drop down and kind of see exactly what it is they're talking about. And here we see large GIFs. And so we have some on the home page. And I didn't see those when I first took a look at it, but maybe it's in this carousel. Oh, there it is right here. So here we have an animation, which is being looked at as a video or a GIF. And if we come back here, we can see this is taking up a lot of space and really slowing the site down. So should you get rid of this GIF or should you keep it? Well, that's not necessarily a question that this is trying to answer. Really what you wanna do is evaluate, number one, how important is that GIF to your site and to what you're trying to accomplish. If it's really important, you might wanna deal with the hit that you're taking on your site speed. Let's look at the next part that they're addressing, and they're saying next gen format, and it's saying things like image formats like JPEG 2000, they provide better compression than PNG or a different type of JPEG. And we can see here that we have some PNGs. And so these are, looks like screenshots, which typically come out from your computer as a PNG. And you wanna make those JPEGs. PNGs are much larger. They're not meant necessarily for a web use. And by taking those from a PNG, you can take them down in size, and you want that a lot smaller. This right here, for example, you've got a 2.7 megabyte image. Remember how we were talking about how you want that to be 200 to 300 kilobytes? So getting those images sized down and then over to the right file format is probably gonna provide a lot of savings. So that's basically a high-level overview of this. There's obviously a lot more depth to it. Another thing about it is that it is a trailing 30-day average. And so one of the things that is very common and frustrating, but that will happen is you'll go make these changes, right? You'll identify all these images are too big, and you'll go back and rerun your site through this test, and it will hardly have moved, if at all. There are a couple of additional tests that you can look at. Just go to webpagetest.org. The most important thing that I like to look at is the first byte load time. The great news is that Amy's site is loading very quickly in terms of that first byte. It's also fun to look up here at the scores, but this can give you a couple things, and we're seeing that something similar show up, which is, oh, you need to compress your images. And so that's another reason why it helps to do multiple tests, is because we can sometimes get some corroborating data. And the corroborating data here is that we need to compress images, which we learned from the Google test. A third and final software that you can use or site that you can use to look at, which I've also preloaded, is Pingdom. And you go to tools.pingdom.com and plug in your website there as well. One of the fun things to look at here is the total page size. And in this case, they're saying that this site has an A, even though we understand that it needs to compress some of its images. We should look at that GIF on the home page. But what we're seeing is, remember how I told you we want to get a page size in the 1, 2, or 3 megabyte range if at all possible? Well, this one is at 43.4, so it's just massive. It's huge. According to Pingdom, it's actually loading pretty well given its size, and its load time is really good. So very few of these things are going to kill your rankings or your site on their own. However, if you spend a little bit of time, you're gonna get that 80-20 result of its peak. So we have Caitlin's results loaded, and again, her page size is dramatically smaller. It's in that range of being under 3 megabytes, which is exactly where we want to see it. Yet she gets a lower site score and a longer load time. So again, there's so many things at play in your site's overall speed. Now, how often should you do these sorts of tests? That depends on how often you update your website. If you really don't update your website often, you're not blogging very often, you're not publishing new content, you don't need to check that often because it's probably not going to change very much. However, if you're following with this marketing strategy that we're outlining for you, you're going to be updating quite a bit. You're going to be publishing quite a bit. And in that case, you probably want to do this every 3 or 4 months. But again, going through a site audit, even if it's as basic as the one that we just went through, will help you understand exactly how Google is seeing your site, exactly how the users and readers are seeing your site, and then hopefully getting a little bit of data on how to pick up your site, make it faster, make it more optimized, and make it a better experience for the people who are looking at it.